Welcome back, everybody, to the UTSA Roadrunners Dynasty. Before we get into the video, make sure you've watched the end of the year before we start to talk about and spoil all the games and everything. But we have wrapped up Season 4 of the Dynasty, the Revamped portion of the Dynasty anyway, and it's ended with a UTSA Bowl victory against the Iowa Hawkeyes in a game that was a low-scoring slugfest early, and then the action really picked up in the second half with an exciting fourth quarter with a couple lead changes in the final minute of the game. But we do emerge victorious on a Keith Combs field goal to end the year at 10-3. Today we're going to talk about our season, talk about the team a little bit, and the future of this series. What is still to come? And we obviously are looking at a new college football game coming out 2024, maybe 6-7 months away, as long as there aren't any further delays. So I've thought about, what's left in the UTSA Dynasty, how do I want to finish it? And we're also going to talk about just the team we're going to have when we do end up continuing, but I'm not going to be immediately jumping into our newest offseason and getting us into Season 5. Rather, on the channel, I'll be focusing now on the New Orleans Saints franchise, and that's going to get a lot of content here, and the UTSA Dynasty is something I'll be working on a little bit on the side, and the series is going to return when I can get you all the episodes in a faster fashion than we went through this season. I was posting, once a week, if that, and I don't think it makes for the best viewing experience, although it was nice to throw it up for college football Saturday. I'm sure a lot of you appreciated that, and it was a good start to the day. But I do think that it's a better experience when you can get through the series at a faster pace, and you're not forgetting about games, and it's just a little bit smoother. So I want Season 5 to come your way in that fashion, so it's going to come a little bit later. Not sure how much later yet. I will be working on some stuff on the side, and I'm not sure yet if I want to try and finish the majority of the season before posting episodes again. That might make it a little bit easier. But regardless, I'm hoping Year 5 is just posted in a way that's more convenient for everybody to watch. So let's talk about this season now. It was a year I was excited to get into. I really wasn't thinking we'd have a great deal of success this year because we lost Joe Wright and we didn't really seem to have the offensive firepower anymore. But I felt like our defense was overall really solid for much of the year. We had seniors like Jason Hall and Preston Quinn, and still had guys like Keytron Jackson and Curtis Mills offensively. But, this was a unique year because true freshmen in my dynasties don't always make a big impact, especially once we get beyond a few years. Like, usually the roster's at a point where true freshmen outside of like 5-star recruits aren't going to be playing very early. And we end up in a situation where our lowest rated running back ends up having a really key part of the offense and gave us back that ground and pound element in the offense that we've been missing. And like when I was recording the preseason stuff and getting that ready and getting highlights and everything, like Raheem Anderson just kept making plays. And I wasn't sure if I could trust it because his ratings aren't that good, but I gave him a chance, and sure enough, it all carried over into the regular season, and we could run the ball between the tackles. He wasn't a big play threat, but he gave us something the offense was missing. And we also expected to see Omar Harris be a key contributor this season as a deep threat and a big play receiver. The issue, though, is he can't catch the football very reliably and ended up dropping 13 passes while catching 21. That is awful. And so, insert Kanikuel Fatualia, the other freshman receiver, who turned into a much more reliable option and ended up, by the end of the year, he had become the number 1 receiver. At times, he dropped the ball as well. 9 drops, 42 receptions. Our team just doesn't have good catching ratings, outside of Johnny Jenkins, who ended up getting hurt earlier in the season, and we missed him. Just when I was really starting to utilize him a bit more and really maximizing his skill set, Jenkins had his senior season come to an abrupt end. The games this year were really tight and really exciting with a lot of big finishes. So we lost early to Rice, and losing a non-conference game like that and starting 1-1, I kind of felt like this might be a year where we're a little bit above 500, but it turns out Rice ended up being a really respectable team. They went 9-4 this year. This was not a bad loss for UTSA in the grand scheme of things. And I think I realized this team might actually be pretty solid once we got to week 4 and we took on Oregon and we pulled that game off late. We were down 27-7 at halftime and then rallied in the second half with 24 in the third. And we ended up winning this game on a walk-off touchdown to Steven Alexander.
Spread the defense out. Here it is. Irvine lets it fly, and it's caught for the touchdown! Steven Alexander, what a catch!
Following the 3-1 start, we took on Iowa State in the Big 12 opener, and I'm not used to Iowa State being the top dogs here, but this ended up being a really low-scoring game, 16-12 final. It was a very good defensive game. It was fun to have these from time to time. We're used to more higher scoring games, especially in NCAA 14. But the Cyclones came out on top, and this gave us a 3-2 start. After that, the last thing I expected was us to rattle off a bunch of wins in a row, especially in all these close games. You know, we didn't have an easy time with Kansas State. That was a pretty good game. And then, you know, the Texas game is one I circle every year. We had never beaten them coming into the season. The games are always extremely tough. And we had a chance this year to finally get that first victory. We got some big plays in this one from senior receiver Ketron Jackson. The defense did struggle, giving up over 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, and not really making a lot of plays. In a lot of these games, there's a play that just luckily went our way, and in this case, it was the 66-yard touchdown to Ketron Jackson. We got, like I said, very lucky. There was little time left, and Texas was able to, you know, get a touchdown with under a minute to go, but we still end up winning the game by 3, scoring that very first win over Texas. And once this game happened, I kind of realized, all right, we got 2 high-quality victories this year. We're starting to figure some things out, and the schedule now lets up a little bit. That's what I thought anyway, but every game still ended up being an absolute battle. We had to come back late to score a win against West Virginia, getting a pair of fourth-quarter touchdowns. Really lucky to win that game on the road. Then Texas Tech. This one ended up being tougher than expected. Baylor 27-23. Another game we pulled out at the very end. Even the UCF game, I thought we'd blow them out, and we did for a while. We let them back in late and ended up being a 7-point finish. Then we go to Cincinnati. I'm like, all right, this needs to be the game where we finally dominate a team. And it was the exact reverse of that. The defense was reeling all day. The receivers kept dropping passes. It was a very frustrating game, and it felt like there was nothing we could do. It was our worst defensive game of the season. The timing of that just couldn't be worse, because if we had won, we'd be in the Big 12 title game, and that opened up all the possibilities. A rematch against Iowa, who at the time was like ranked number 1. If we beat them, we for sure would have ended up in the top 8, and then into the college football playoff. But losing to Cincinnati ensured that would not be happening. So I did want to go through the college football playoff still today. I have set that up using the tool. So here's a look at our 8-team bracket we've got here with the Arkansas State Red Wolves, the number 1 team in the country and the only unbeaten team in the playoff. Texas ended up winning the Big 12 championship, and that meant they would go to the college football playoff instead of us. They'll match up with number 7 Florida. We also have Washington in this playoff as the second-ranked team. BYU, Iowa State. So although they lost the Big 12 championship game. It was their only loss to a really good team, and the Cyclones still end up in the 8-team tournament. And then the final matchup is going to feature the Georgia Bulldogs and the NC State Wolfpack. We will get to the college football playoff action here soon. Heisman Trophy winner was the Florida running back DeMarcus Bowman, who beat out Malik Brown, the freshman quarterback of Arkansas State, the only undefeated team, of course, left. And the running back ends up taking it. So, unfortunately, we don't get this storyline of Malik Brown being the Heisman Trophy winner, but he was the runner-up. Checking out the awards quick, as Malik Brown came in 6th for the Maxwell Award. Walter Camp goes to Bowman as well. The Benerick Award. The user team, I think, always ends up winning this, but goes to Preston Quinn with his 18-sack season to finish out his great career. It's not the only award he's taken home. A lot of hardware here for the top edge rusher. Michael Johnson Jr., the O'Brien Award for FAU. Donovan Edwards gets the Walker Award. Biletnikoff, Porter Rooks of NC State. We'll see if that helps them against the Bulldogs. And the rest of the awards here, we got a couple players that have taken home some hardware. Another one here for Quinn. He takes the Lombardi. And then Darren Malone almost got the Butkus Award, but it goes to Jasper Williams. Kima Guyton takes home the Thorpe Award. Those 2 pick sixes probably helped him out. And Keith Combs, the Groza Award. He definitely grew a lot this season and hit some big kicks in big moments. You know, with the kicking in this game, where I have it just decided basically by the ratings, you know, some of these kicks I'm never quite sure. And, you know, these game-winning kicks actually have a little bit of drama. Ketron Jackson takes home the Jet Award. Couldn't even give the Heisman runner-up the first team All-American Award, huh? That's tough. Preston Quinn, Darren Malone, Jason Hall, Keith Combs are all first team All-Americans. We don't usually have offensive players get these awards here. Guyton, Jackson, second team All-Americans. However, Kanikuel Fatualia, a freshman All-American receiver. Nothing here for Raheem Anderson, unfortunately, but pretty cool to see him get the accolade. And then for the all-conference, you got Jay Coley, Quinn, our tackles here, John Davis, Austin Woods, Darren Malone, Jason Hall, and Keith Combs. For second team, all Big 12, Corey Zmolik. I'm excited about him looking ahead to next year. And then Dorsey, Matthews, Guyton. 43 touchdown passes on the year for Michael Johnson Jr. That is the most in college football, and he also led the league or the nation in passing yards and only had 5 interceptions. DeMarcus Bowman, 1,638 rushing yards. That's just ahead of Patrick Smith out of Vanderbilt. Donovan Edwards was just under 1,600. And then at receiver, Henry Wilson of Wyoming had 1,800 yards, tripling nearly his numbers from his junior season. That's pretty good, I'd say. On the defensive side, Preston Quinn, though, far and away the sack leader. Also top 10 in tackles for loss. 8 interceptions here for a pair of cornerbacks. That's pretty awesome. That's a lot for a 12-game season. And Tysheem Johnson had 4 pick sixes, doing his best to Ron Bland impersonation. On the season, Trey Irvine had 25 touchdowns and 15 interceptions. Just can't ever seem to keep that number reasonable. This was Trey Irvine's first year to be our starting quarterback, and I really did enjoy playing with him. I thought he fit what we wanted to do just fine, and overall played pretty well. Curtis Mills had a strong season, 582 yards on the ground, along with a few more receiving, 520. We used him a lot in that capacity. I've started utilizing the backs more in the passing game just in general in my series, and I think it's working out quite well. But there was always something missing, and that was helped, of course, by Raheem Anderson giving us that physical presence in the running game. And then Keytron Jackson got a fair amount of rushes as well, be it on options or jet sweeps. Loved his versatility and definitely going to be a tough player to replace. And he is going to end his time at UTSA with 1,816 yards, 13 receiving touchdowns. He also had 9 rushing touchdowns, no kick return touchdowns, no punt return touchdowns, oddly enough. So 22 total touchdowns in 3 years, playing an important role. Ideally, you'd have like a Joe Wright presence that allows Jackson to be more of a complementary player, and it wasn't as easy to make that happen this season. Juwan Johnson, he was not very good, and Raheem Anderson was clearly a better power back. And then Curtis Mills led us in receptions. Kanikuel Fatualia, 653 yards, 5 touchdowns. I ended up really trusting him this year and going to him on 3rd downs, 4th downs, when you gotta have it, especially when Johnny Jenkins went down. Like at that point, very few players had really good hands, so we're just gonna go to the guy who just seems to always find a way to get open. And he does have, 77 route running, I think is okay for a freshman. This game in general will use a little bit more of the ranges at the ratings, so a lot of players come in with like 52 catching or 62 carrying at running back. 77 route running, I think, stands out a decent bit. Curtis Davis had kind of a quiet season. I was surprised to see his numbers as low as they were, and I probably could have utilized him more than we did. Alexander, though, I think a big reason is a lot of 2 tight end sets and Alexander getting so many looks. Like, he had almost as many receptions, so the tight ends were still a part of the offense. But Omar Harris, it was really going to be up to him to help replace Joe Wright earlier in the year, and it was clear he just didn't have the hands to get the job done. And hopefully he gets a boost going into next year, because we're going to be losing Jenkins, Mills, Davis, Keytron Jackson. So someone's going to have to get thrown the football. Kellen Holman, by the way, 6 catches, and he had 3 in the bowl game. And he had one that helped set up the game-winning field goal. Another one on like a 3rd and 22 that set up a 4th down conversion. Kellen Holman, not that fast. Nothing really stands out with him. But with the stamina we have in this series, like, it causes a lot of player rotation. So guys like Holman will get in there, especially late in games. And he came through and we needed him. The offensive line, I thought, did a pretty good job in pass protection overall, but the running game, it was very hit or miss. Like, this is not like a terrific offensive line. It can be solid, but in tough matchups, they tend to be exposed. Defensively, we've had so much turnover in the front 7. It's been really difficult to maintain a run defense when you're constantly bringing in brand new starters along the D-line and at linebacker. It's just been bad timing. So this year we ended up with brand new starters. James Johnson. We had Darren Malone, who's a senior. He's going to be graduating. So, like, it's just going to keep rotating even next year. Like our 2 defensive tackles, Woods and Davis, both seniors. Preston Quinn's going to move on. So Corey Smolik kind of becomes one of the defensive leaders by default, and I think that over time he's turned into a pretty solid edge rusher, and hopefully he's ready for a junior leap taking over for Preston Quinn. He ended up being 2nd on the team in sacks this year. Austin Woods came in 3rd, and then John Davis. We don't have a lot of players that have proven themselves that are ready to take over a lot of roles next year. So the defense is going to be tricky possibly to figure out. For the secondary, Nick Dorsey, the junior, had 2 interceptions. Kima Guyton had a pair of pick 6s. Brandon Matthews, the senior, had 2. And then John Posick got a fair amount of playing time. And I thought his coverage really stood out. He was able to play a little bit better than Matthews even at times. He went with some 3 safety looks, and next year he's probably just going to be a traditional starting safety, probably taking over for Jason Hall, and I'm excited to see him in that role. Here are the career stats for our team, and at the running back position, Curtis Mills, almost 1,500 rushing yards over a few years. And then Keytron Jackson, Curtis Davis, a lot of receiving yards graduating. Davis had 15 touchdowns, 2,036 yards. So once we get to next year, I mean, you're not going to see a very experienced team overall. We're going to have a senior quarterback, which is going to help. And then Raheem Anderson probably becomes the lead running back by default. And we see who ends up being the complement. Maybe it's Deshaun Washington or somebody else. And then at receiver, Kaniku El-Fatualia, Omar Harris, Kellen Holman, and probably a freshman. Or maybe we'll have a transfer incoming. We could certainly use some next year, and you never know if anyone's going to show up. Keytron Jackson did, though, so it's possible. A lot of tackles for Jason Hall in his career. 321, 2 INTs, 3 sacks. I felt like there was more. I blitz him all the time, and you'd think you run him to a couple more interceptions, but it didn't really happen. 61 sacks for Preston Quinn. That is phenomenal, and a clean 100 tackles for loss. Not an easy guy to replace. A couple years ago, we had him and Joe Wright, and I'm not sure we have anybody now that really has the magnitude of those guys in terms of their star power. Like, who is the face of the team next year? That's a really difficult question. It's probably going to be the quarterback, Trey Irvine. Dorsey might end up being the top-rated player on the roster. We'll see how the development goes. But does this team really have a standout star performer in Season 5? I'm not convinced of that. So let's take a look at the recruits, because there should be a lot of playing time that is open for the incoming freshmen. Right now, this class is only 6 players deep. And Markel Taylor is the top rated of the bunch, a junior college cornerback who should be able to slide into a starting spot, especially with Brandon Matthews graduating. But with Taylor's speed and man cover ability, he's a lock for a starting role. I made sure to really address offensive line a bit better and really adding just anybody we can get, but trying to get potential starters. Shug Jeter might be more of a backup, but Clarence Doris should be a starting guard. Charlie Reynolds also starting potential. Cole Wood at 70 overall. I mean, he might walk into playing time. We'll see how our depth looks. Doesn't seem to be a great athlete, but offers a well-developed skill set, it seems. He should be able to win in a lot of ways. Maybe not be elite, but a player I think could start. Then we got Jackson Hawkins here, a 66 overall wide receiver, at least based on our scouting. Like, I obviously only scout until I get to 50 or just past 50%, so these overalls can completely change. And sure would be nice if it did change for Jackson Hawkins, but doesn't seem all that promising. So we'll see what else we can do on signing day to boost this team. Looking at what we got here, Trayvon Davis is the top target. Cooper Rogers is locking us out. We're going to open the door on that. And then we got Allen Matthews, an athlete. He's not going to be an offensive player to boost that side of the game. He's definitely going to be a front 7 player. And then tight end Reed Wallace. Recruiting's honestly been pretty tough. I've given myself some house rules in this, where I'm not just like throwing whoever I want on the board. It's players who have top 10 interest, and then based on like our team caliber, I'm able to add players and whatnot that are 4-star or above. But it's just not, it hasn't been easy to recruit those players. We've really just gotten beat a bunch. And this year I focus more on O-line and then Markel Taylor. So we do have some good players, but there are some positions where you'd really like us to do better, obviously. At the running back spot, it's going to be open competition next year, but Raheem Anderson likely opens as the starter. We have a lot of other running backs here. I wasn't impressed with Jawan Johnson, but maybe Jason Williams is somebody who will get some playing time. Deshaun Washington does have good top-end speed, so there's a chance he gets a role by default in maybe the Curtis Mills receiving capacity. And then we go to wide receiver. We didn't really redshirt anybody this year outside of A.J. Thompson, 59 overall. Unless he gets some serious development, I'm not counting on him. So, Harris, Uel-Fatualia, Holman, Barnes. I think next year it's going to be a very run-heavy offense. I just can't see us having the personnel to throw it a bunch and actually be successful. So, I think we really need to lean into this running game. Hopefully Anderson develops, but, I mean, this year, he was very effective. He should be better next season, and if we can find a good complement, I think we're going to be a very ground and pound oriented offense. Steven Alexander is a junior. Curtis Davis is a senior, so we should be also probably getting a freshman involved at the tight end spot, but Alexander's going to start, and I think we'll end up using him quite a bit with his 88 catching, and he proved to be pretty effective this season. I don't know that next year's offense is going to be all that flashy. We have players that can be, Kaniku Uel-Fatualia and Omar Harris, but they're as likely to drop a pass as they are to catch one, so your guess is as good as mine. An X factor here could be KJ Marseille, who was an athlete that we brought in, and the plan was to play him at cornerback, but we've just had better options. And we've also worked him in on the offensive side a little bit. He's taken a lot of snaps there. He only has one career catch, but there's a possibility of just flat out moving him to wide receiver. He only has 59 catching, and he doesn't have like the best route running or anything, but maybe. I don't know. I could also look to move him to safety. I think that's also in the cards. John Posick, though, he should get a big role next season. Tommy Hughes, I think we're prepared pretty well in the secondary. Hopefully James Johnson, can be the leader at linebacker next year, but count on 2 more new starters. Who replaces the D tackles? It's just been a lot to keep up with, and the recruiting has been, like I said, challenging. Like, as I look at everything right now, it's hard to see this being a great team next year. But I thought the same this season. Along the offensive line, a bunch of senior starters. So Carl Gaddy probably becomes a starter. And then we've definitely recruited fairly well, I think, along the O-line. So Garrett Jarwin's going to be better as a year 2 center. And then hopefully freshmen can step in at the guard spot, and then you got to find another starting tackle. It just feels like we're losing everybody. 17 seniors on this team, and it seems that all the seniors are starters. So there's a lot to replace next year, and the team definitely has a lot of question marks. And there is a chance that year 5 of this series ends up being kind of my NCAA 14 finale. Like, that's certainly coming up with the new game coming, and hopefully it ends up being a great game and we can all move on. It's been a couple console generations. We're already looking at getting refreshed console releases here. Like the PS5 Slim is coming, and we haven't had a new NCAA football game since 2013, a few months before the PS4 launched. But I've had a great time with this game. I am certainly happy to play more of it, but just the timeline of everything, I'm not immediately jumping into year 5. And if the game comes out in the summer, that doesn't leave a lot of time to go like 3 more years in with UTSA. So there's going to be at least 1 more season. Will there be more? That's really to be determined based on how well Season 5 goes from an interest standpoint in the series, and then just time and my drive to continue making the NCAA content. We'll see where that is as we approach the summer. We're not anywhere close to that right now. So 1 more year, we'll see about more. And I know next year's team might not be in the shape to really be competitive like we were this season. So unfortunately, I've run into an issue trying to do the college football playoff setup. I used the tool to set it up, and I've done it before, but I went through the first round, simulated the games, and tried to set up the second round, and I wasn't able to do so. And in the help section, basically, it says that either I made a mistake in using the tool, or there's an issue in the file that's kind of out of my control. So I can't go through the college football playoff the way I had intended. I'm not sure if that's going to affect like future attempts to try and use the tool, but I'll have to keep that in mind. So it looks like we're going to be celebrating the Washington Huskies as the champions of this season. I'm not sure why it was a number 1, number 3 matchup, but the Huskies, they end up winning the national championship game over Arkansas State and freshman quarterback Malik Brown. That's a phenomenal season for the Red Wolves. Maybe we'll play them next year. But it's the Huskies who are your champions. 2 touchdown passes, dominant rushing effort in this game. Well done. Iowa and Texas had their bowl games. Texas lost theirs to Florida, while Iowa State was able to defeat BYU, who was number 2 at 10-3. How'd they end up at number 2 with 3 losses? That seems impossible. Georgia had beat NC State. Yeah, I wish this had worked out properly, but I don't know what exactly happened. I ran the tool like I did in previous off seasons. I've done this before. But nonetheless, that is the end of UTSA Dynasty Season 4. There will be more on the way. I will try to give y'all a heads up of when to expect it. I would not, though, expect it probably for a couple months at the earliest. Going to be focusing a lot on the Saints franchise and some new stuff over on the second channel. But I'm not done yet with NCAA 14 and college football revamped. It's going to be something that I'm working on here on the side. And then probably after football season, it'll be a lot easier to think about when that season's actually going to happen. And I want it to happen when I can get you all the episodes in a pretty timely fashion. And we'll see if there's anything beyond one more year with the Roadrunners. But thank you all for supporting the series. I hope you enjoyed this year. It was a very fun season, and I'm looking forward to doing more of it. Please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and have a great day, everybody.